Hi, I'm Dave Artley, Adjunct Instructor of Trumpet at Colorado State University Pueblo. Today we're going to talk briefly about some strategies on how to prepare for the 2021 Colorado All-State Band Audition for trumpet. Now, there are several parts to this audition. You have to do some major scale, you have to do a harmonic minor scale, you have to do a chromatic scale, and then there are two excerpts from some etudes. This year, those etudes are from Phil Snedeker's Lyrical Etudes for Trumpet. Now, first of all, this folder that you've come to at this website will have several items. It will have copies of the items we're going to talk about today, as well as two videos of me performing these pieces. So you have at least a reference for how these should sound. Don't be afraid to go back and forth between the talk, the reference materials, and the video as you're preparing to work on these pieces. All right, the first thing we need to realize is that just running through these etudes, beginning to end, is not the best approach to preparing these. Okay, you will want to do some reps, but we're going to do some supporting work too, some other types of etudes, some other kind of work that will help prepare you for these pieces. Let's start with his etude number 11. So this is the piece. We start at the very beginning and we go to the first quarter note of before B, and that's where we cut off. So the beginning to the measure before B. There are several challenges on this piece. First of all, I think the tempo, for younger players especially, the tempo is a little bit of a challenge, getting this up to speed. Secondly, keeping these 16th notes steady at that tempo, especially these 16th note pickups, which have a tendency to want to rush. At this speed, we're really in the realm of double tonguing, so being able to double tongue this kind of figure is a bit of a challenge. And there are several places where keeping the tempo at a nice steady pace. I find that these eighth notes, especially these figures here, tend to want to pull back and drag. And finally, musically, we want to keep this light and almost a feeling of one throughout the piece. So how do we prepare this? All right. Well, first of all, as we're doing these pickups, we need to be subdividing before we start. So we don't just start 3 and 1, 2, 3. We think 1 and 2 and 3 and 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 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Does that make sense? So subdivide before you actually start this piece. You're going to use a metronome almost every time you're practicing this to make sure this is steady and light and that you're really, really getting the breakdown of everything steady within the beats. You're also going to find where your tendencies are, where you want to rush and where you want to drag, and that metronome will help you out with that as well. There'll be some drill work that we need to do. First of all, double tonguing. If you can't double tongue yet, this is going to be a challenge for you. So we need to work that. And we're going to talk about some places that we can start working on that double tonguing. We want to keep it light, and we're going to want to drill in the keys of the piece. We're in B flat major for this throughout the piece. So let's look at some things we can do to drill for this piece. First of all, this is out of the Arbin book. The Arbin book is one of those places that we can go to and find almost any sort of a breakdown on some of the technical issues and items and drills to help us get there. Okay, so this is actually from page 69 of the new authentic edition of the Arbin Complete Conservatory Method for Trumpet. And this is just working our B flat major scale. Now you notice we're not working just B flat to B flat. We're doing all the modes, or we're starting from B flat to B flat with 2 flats. We're going from C to C with 2 flats. We're going from D to D with 2 flats, or in B flat major. So that more lines up more closely with this kind of lick. We're playing from E flat up to C. We're doing starting on F, but it's all in the key. So those kind of exercises are really helpful in being able to play B flat major from any note to any note. Okay. Now, there are also some arpeggiated measures where we have to play arpeggios. And so we can also work on those kind of exercises in the Arbin book. When we look at page 170 and 171, we have major and minor arpeggios. And in this piece, we're looking at some B flat arpeggios. We're looking at E flat arpeggio. We're looking at F. So if you find those in those exercises, let's go back. B flat arpeggios. See some of those licks that are showing up in that etude? E flat, F. These kind of exercises where you really have them under your fingers will help you be ready for these when you run into them in the actual etude. Now, double tonguing, right? So, let's go back and look real quickly at the Snedeker. He's got these are 6 notes at a time, with the first 2 being slurred. Ta ta ka ta ka ta 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 ka ta ka ta. And so, or to 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 ko to ko to 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 ko to ko to would be a little bit better with the wind flow. We can do some preparation for these in our Arbin book. This is page 217 in the Arbin. And here are these 6-figure double tonguing exercises. Now, what I would recommend is practice these as they're written, all tongued, but then also make them more like what you find in the Snedeker etudes, and slur the first 2 of each of these groupings. Okay, these are suggested metronome markings, but only do these as fast as you can do them perfectly, and let that tongue figure out the coordination it needs to make this double tonguing happen. Tonguing and multiple tonguing is something that requires coordination and endurance, and the only way to get there is to do it. So what you'll find is this: as soon as you start practicing these kind of exercises, you'll gradually get more and more coordinated, and the tongue will be able to do the work for accurately and longer segments of time. So you have to do the work on this. So there are some suggestions for how to approach this. Remember, on this piece, this tempo, if you can't play it clean at that tempo, you are better off playing it clean but slower. So if you can only get to the point where you're single tonguing this, then play it slower for the audition, do it cleanly, and single tongue it. Most of your judges will grade you higher on that kind of approach with cleanliness, as opposed to playing it at tempo but very sloppy. All right, so let's look now at Etude 14. This is the second excerpt. And here we're starting at the beginning. We're going all the way to beat 3 of the measure before C. So now there's several challenges. We have these intervals across the bar line, these wider intervals, these fourths. they're a little bit wider, and we need to have that connection. We want to keep the line moving forward so that we don't get very vertical on this piece. And we want it to, with musicality, we want to have a little bit of push and pull, but not have it be out of time. Finally, there's also some range issues on this. We do have the high C. It is an optional high C. Don't be afraid to take that optional G if that is the way you sound the best. But we do have the requirements for this, lots of these B flats, right? And so it does take a little bit of range. We also have that low A, which I find is actually one of the more difficult parts of the piece, after playing high, to come down to this low A. And with the upper register here, then of course we have intonation issues, how to play these upper notes that tend to be sharp anyway, how to keep them in tune. So first of all, let's look at some of our basic preparation work. There are two different keys for this, right? We start out with 3 flats, and when you look at this, you realize that this is actually C minor. C minor is a relative of E flat major. It has the same key signature, but we're all centered on this C is our central tone or tonic note. So we can do some prep work with preparing for C minor scales. Let's look what we have here. So these are out of one of the things you'll find at the website where you found this video, in my Materials for Trumpet Players Scales book. Here is our C minor scale, and this is the C natural minor, which means we just play from C to C with this key signature of 3 flats: B flat, E flat, and A flat. Okay. Now, you'll notice as we go along, see some of these B naturals? These B naturals here? Yeah, they're suggesting that we might have some natural minor, but we also are playing in the harmonic minor. When we do the harmonic form of the C minor scale, we raise the 7th, a half step, which in this case is B, so that B flat from the key signature now becomes B natural, and we have that B natural throughout, up and down on that scale. And that, you see, is definitely implied here several times with the harmonic minor too. So we see both natural minor and with these B flats, and harmonic minor with these B naturals, both of which you can work and should be preparing, and also a great scale to prepare for your audition anyway. Okay. There's another scale now that we need to be working on, because what happens at B, but we have a key change. We go to 1 flat, and now it has that major feel. So we are starting here. This is basically F major. So just like we were doing before, we'll still want to work that scale as well. If we go back to our Arbin on page 67, we've got some of these F major exercises. Number 21 is the same one that we were doing back there for the B flat major. Again, we're starting on each of the, doing each of the modes. We're going F major from F to F, F major from G to G, from A to A. And if you want to know more about modes, go ahead and download my scale book, and we talk about what those modes actually are. But by being able to play with 1 flat from A to A, or B flat to B flat, or G to G, that covers a lot of what Mr. Snedeker is asking us to do. Here we're going F to B flat and back down all the way to D. Here E flat up to A flat and G. These are the kind of different modes of that, of this, in this case, C minor scale. And here we're on F to A and G to B flat. This is in the F major. So we practice these scales, but we get fluent with them by being able to play not only from tonic to tonic, but from any of the modes, any of the notes to any of the other notes in that key signature. Okay. Getting across these intervals now, we want to connect the wind. Always connect the wind. Now that's just a standard. We always want to connect the wind. Whether we're tonguing or not, we want connected wind. So one of your strategies is to play these things all slurred first. Slur from G to C to get that connected wind and really feel how that's supposed to happen. And then go ahead and add the tonguing to it to make sure that you're not letting the tongue get in the way of that wind. We want to think musically across the bar line, and we want to connect through the end of each of these phrases. As we do these motions, these connecting these winds, remember we're gonna use the bottom note as kind of a launching pad or as our base to move to the next note. So we want to move from the G to the C, the G to the C, and really C to the F, and really start the wind blowing on this lower note and make the adjustment to blow towards that higher note. If you start making the adjustment and the connection of the wind when the valves go down, you're already too late. You have to start that early. So what are some things we can do to practice that kind of connection? Well, number one, Arbin has some good things to look at. This is page 38 in that New Authentic Edition. These are slurs and using intervals. So you notice this is the fourth, same interval that we have in the Snedeker, right? Now we're slurring. So if you slur these to start, and if you do 7, 8, and 9, we have 3 different keys, F, C, and G, and we're working this fourth interval, up and down. And you get the feel of working this connection of the wind and connection of these notes by slurring them. Then go, after you've got the really nice connection on these exercises, go back, and to make them more like the Snedeker piece, go ahead and tongue those intervals. So you can go ahead and tongue this, toe, toe, and go ahead and tongue all of these exercises, making sure that your connection. Now, at any point, if you're getting chips and the wind is not connecting, don't be afraid to step back and go back to that slurring. Anytime you're connecting, going back to mouthpiece only or just slurring the note between the notes is a great way to make sure you've established that connected wind. Some other things that can be helpful are long tones. Now these are out of my daily routine book, also available. And you notice we're slurring all these notes. We're slurring these up and really connecting the wind. Slurred, smooth and connected, and relaxed and easy. Between these and lip slurs, these are some of your best ways to get the connection of the wind, but also to work on that other issue for this piece, which is that range, working yourself up to the range. One of my favorite comments from my students has been that, wow, I've been doing my long tones and my lip slurs, and before I knew it, my range was really getting up there. And I wasn't even working on it. Well, he was working on it. He was just doing it the right way with this connected wind and getting there gradually. So these exercises can be very helpful. And notice they're very similar when you look at these connections and these long tones, and you go back and you look at some of what's happening in the Snedeker piece. You'll see that same kind of figure in both of these. So getting that connected wind and being able to work at this range is a gradual process. It's not too late to start this now, but don't just use, again, hacking at these etudes over and over and beating yourself up and expect your range to go up to meet it. You need to work your way gradually up to that. Okay, so I'll have all these posted. I'll also have the two videos of myself playing, giving you a short, quick example of how these should go. As you're approaching your audition, don't forget your scales. You've still got your major scale, and your harmonic minor, and your chromatic, your full range of your instrument. The major and the minor, you should be choosing scales that you can do at least 2 octaves. And there are tempo markings on the audition. You need to be 16th notes or at quarter note equals 112 for the major scale. 8th notes at quarter note equals 120 for the harmonic minor. And at a very slow tempo, really, the chromatic scale is 8th notes with the quarter note equals 80. So breathing and all those other things come into the play. Not necessarily technique. You have to know your scale. You have to know it really well. But being able to play that at that nice steady tempo. The best approach to scales are know all of your major and minor scales and your chromatic. And just keep practicing them all the time. And then you just pull them out for something like this when you need it. Or you work specifically on these when you need it. In the meantime, however, if you don't know all your scales, start working on them. But you can go ahead and choose the scales that you're going to do now. There's no excuse for not knowing your scale by the time you get to the audition, because you can practice it every day 10 times from between now and the audition, because you get to choose the scale that you play. Finally, remember that everything counts when you do this. So your scales, if I'm judging these, I assume that you know the scale because of what I just said. You've had, since May to practice this every day, these scales every day if you needed to, if you wanted to. So I expect you to know them. I'm listening for tone. I'm listening for range. I'm listening for the steadiness of the pulse. I'm listening for intonation. I'm listening for direction. And really, how those scales tell me a lot about what kind of a musician you are before we even get to the etudes. So don't forget that those scales are important. The other thing those scales really do for you nicely is you do those first and you nail them, and it gives that mental boost of success early on in the audition because you practiced them, you know them so well, and those scales are just like putting on a glove. It's just so easy and comforting. And boy, that takes a lot out of the nerves when you have that early success. So don't skip the scales. All right. If you have any questions, please feel free to send me a note. These are all on our website at artleymusic.com, so you can contact me through there. You can send me an email at david.artley@csupueblo.edu. Or if you'd like comments on this, or if you'd like to get together and maybe do some one-on-one work on preparing for these auditions. Good luck, and hope to see you on the all-state list next year. Thanks.